Welcome to Politically Speaking, Insights and Issues. I'm your host, Dave Szollosy, and thanks very much for joining us. Have you ever purchased coffee labeled fair trade and wondered what that really meant? Also, you may have heard about the religious community called the Jesuits and wondered just to whom that refers. Well, today we have an opportunity to answer both of those questions. Canadian Jesuits International is hosting Father Arturo Estrada, Jesuit, who is director of the Jesuit mission in Chiapas, Mexico. We welcome him to the show for a conversation on their work, along with Jenny Cafiso, the director for Canadian Jesuits International. Father Arturo, thank you very, very much for coming. Jenny, thank you very much for coming up. It's been a bit of a long day for you, traveling up from Mexico today.
Well, from Chiapas.
From Chiapas.
From our mountains. Yeah.
Wow. So you're okay, though?
Yep, I'm okay.
Okay,
I'm still alive.
Can we just start by, I would like to ask you about the history of the Jesuit mission in Bachajón? Bachajón?
Yep.
Okay. And about the people with whom you're working. Can you tell us a bit about the history of the Jesuits there?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a long story because we had been there for 61 years. We arrived there in 1958. And the bishop asked us, as the Society of Jesus, to go there because there were no roads, there were anything, and it's a very big extension land area. It's like 3,500 square kilometers, and we have 600 villages, communities, as we used to call. And we were there because they asked us to go there as a missionaries because the church hadn't seen that place. It was like no one place. And
so very, very isolated communities. Very
isolated communities. And I can say that we can see the history of Misión de Bachajón in three periods. The first one was when we arrived and we realized that to be there is not only for a sacramental work like baptism and all that stuff, like the normal work of the church.
What most people would identify as religious activity, per se.
Yeah, religious activity.
Okay.
We realized that there were many unfair things. And the people there, they didn't own the land, and there were like 10% of the people outsiders. They owned the 90% of the land area, and there were like a slavery way of living there. And
would it be correct to call them tenant farmers?
That's it. And the first maybe 20 years it was for learning language, for learning culture, and also learning how the social fabric in below the culture there. And that's when they realized that they were a way of living, and they started with the cargos structure.
The what structure?
Cargos. It's roles. There's roles inside the villages, inside the communities.
Okay.
People that are chosen to do something like fighting for the rights or being a catechist or different political and ecclesiastic things.
Ecclesiastic referring to church-based activity.
Yeah, both because for according the cultural way of living of the people, they don't like us. They don't put in different parts the political and the religious thing. It's both are together. And for example, now we are trying to we're suing the government for having a different kind of election by customs. And when they start a political meeting, they start with praying with the rite, with the different rite. That's why for people there everything is mixed because of the spirituality, because of the very heart-centered spirituality, and that was the first.
I'm not sure the word you're saying there. The very centered. What was that?
Heart-centered.
Heart-centered.
Heart-centered. Like in Celtal, if I say you, how are you, I should say Binchiawotan, which means what your heart says. Yeah, it's very.
What does your heart say?
What does your heart say? Yeah, and this 20 years was the first big period of learning the language, the way of living, all that stuff, and to realize that people need help in order to reconstruct the social fabric. After that, the second period was to start the Indigenous Rights Center, and we started to translate the Bible. It only took 30 years to translate the Bible.
Now, just to be clear on this, like you are Mexican yourself.
Yeah.
But the people in this area of Chiapas speak a different language, a
Yes.
unique language. What's it called?
Celtal.
Okay.
Celtal, which is a Mayan language.
A Mayan language. Okay.
Yeah, there's five.
So that's the language into which you were translating
Yeah.
the liturgy and the scripture.
Yeah, and we had to go to the Greek, not to Spanish. Obviously, we had to go to the Greek
Right.
in order to translate. And we, the people that they were, there's 72 books on the Bible, and we divided. Well, the Jesuits there, they divided in 72 villages, for they can translate the Bible by their own words in a dynamic translation, not a literal translation. And it's a very good way of translating, because, for example, when you refer to the body of Christ, you used to say when we say the tortilla of Christ, which is not bread, it's tortilla, it's the main meal.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's a beautiful way to understand the gospel.
And so what you're saying, the reason, and I should just clarify, when you said 72 books, we're talking the Catholic Bible, just in case there's somebody watching going, hey, hang on. No, the Catholic Bible has 72 books.
Yeah.
But when you talk about going back to the Greek, is that to get a better impact of the sense or meaning, or to get a more literal translation? I'm not sure.
Of the meaning, because it's not a literal translation. This is a dynamic translation. You need to go to the sense of the meaning of the words in order to do it as well, because our own rights of the native church, that's what we start building in those years. It's approved by Rome. We spent like 15 years back and forth talking to people there in Rome, for they can understand, because people in Rome, they don't speak Celtal. And we were like bridge between the native church, like the deacons, the catechists, the people there translating the Bible, between people there in Rome and here in Chiapas.
A word that's tossed around sometimes in this context is enculturation. Would you see that was the mission that you were doing? Was the enculturation of the church dogma into the people's identity? Is that
absolutely? That was the first 40 years. That was our main goal, to enculturate there, to listen to the people. I think this is the main point: to listen to the people, to realize that they had a very deep spirituality, different than our spirituality, and that it matches very well with the gospel and with justice. Justice, gospel, and life, it's the same for us. And that's what we call the Lekil Kush Lechalil, which is the good life. The good life. And the good life in many indigenous cultures, it's how to how to be well, not in only in economically speaking, but in heart, in your feelings, with your family, how to be well, be good. And that's what the mission since 1958 it's aiming to be well. That's why all the coffee and the co-ops that we are working with the people there, and that's why we've pushed very harder the native church, because they have the right to have their own church in their own language, because God speaks to them in their own language, not in English, not in Spanish, but in Celtal.
And I think we're going to probably get into the last 20 years of the 60 years as we look at the programs going on. But let me ask Jenny first. You're with Canadian Jesuits International Director. Can you just explain and contextualize here in Canada? So what is that? What is CGI, and what do you do?
So Canadian Jesuits International is the international solidarity agency of the Jesuits in Canada. So there are the Jesuits in Mexico, there are Jesuits in Canada, and among its many activities, there are Jesuits have schools and parishes and other initiatives, but one of them is Canadian Jesuits International. And the purpose of this initiative, which has been in existence for about 60 years, is to build and foster solidarity between the global South and the global North. And we do that through, in many ways. One is by supporting different initiatives in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. For example, some of the work that Father Arturo is going to speak about today. But also, and perhaps more significantly, to try to raise awareness in Canada about our common home and our common purpose. That not only because many of the problems or issues that are faced by people in the South have roots in our own countries because of various decisions that are made in terms of trade agreements or in terms of the operation of our mining industries, etc. But also because there is a common purpose that transformation has to happen with a sense of partnership and solidarity. It's a two-way street. And so, for example, his visit here is he's going to be meeting with schools and parishes, young people, in order to learn about the things that you're just asking him about, to learn about another way to see the world, another way of building a more just world for all. And so that's what we try to do.
And it seems to be more important, well, I don't know, I may say more important maybe isn't actually correct, but there's some greater awareness around that need for that international cooperation, partly brought about, as you say, by the trade agreements, because Canada now is so closely intertwined with the economy in Mexico because of the North American trade agreements that exist. And also, when you talk about our common home, the climate crisis, bringing home to a lot of people how there has to be international cooperation, international focus on addressing them. Would that be part and parcel of what we're talking about here?
Yes, absolutely. You know, we have to work together in order to these issues are global issues. They're not only local issues. They have global roots, and we have to work together, but we also have we have a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn from when Arturo speaks of people greeting each other what does your heart say, or how is your heart? I think that it gives us something to think about in our own context and our own culture here. So these initiatives of exchange are a way to learn from each other. That it's no longer the idea that we're there to teach something.
And we've barely scratched the surface so far. Stay with us. We're going to get into more of the details of the programs that are operating and how they impact us. Stay with us here on Politically Speaking. So, yeah. Thanks for staying with us here on Politically Speaking, Insights and Issues. I'm Dave Szollosy, and today we're talking with Father Arturo Estrada from Chiapas, Mexico, and Jenny Cafiso, Director of Canadian Jesuits International. And we're talking about coffee and justice and how those impact our choices and how our choices impact what's going on in the developing world. When we're talking about where you're from, can we just bring up the map for a second, just so people can identify what we're speaking about? And can you just point out, Jenny, where the community is on this map?
Yes, there's Tuxtla Gutierrez in the middle. That's the biggest city of the state, and we are northeast from this city in where the highlands start.
Okay, so the northeast corner of
Yep.
the state of Chiapas.
Yeah, that's it.
Which is
the purple one.
The purple.
yeah, the purple land there. That's the southernmost state in Mexico, right?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about. Thank you very much. So if people have heard of Chiapas at all, it was probably in connection with the 1994 rebellion. The Zapatista National Liberation Army were responding to at the time, the negotiated North American Free Trade Agreement.
Yep.
Now, and the Zapatistas thought that was going to have an incredibly bad impact upon the local people. So they did respond. They burned military posts. They seized ranches, and eventually, I think it was Bishop Samuel Ruiz, the Bishop of San Cristobal de las Casas, helped to negotiate the peace settlement.
Yep.
So they had predicted at that time that NAFTA would really hasten the dispossession or the loss of land from the indigenous people, driving down prices and making it more difficult for them to succeed. Are these impacts what was experienced by the local peasants?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I would say two things about that. The first thing is that, well, the impact of the ZLN, it's part of the big movement. I mean that when they rised in 1994.
Yeah, well, you said the acronym very quickly. So the impact of the rebel army.
Yeah.
Okay.
The rebel army.
Just people might have not picked up the acronym there. The Spanish acronym.
Yeah, of course. And behind the ZLN, there's all the roles of the church, because they had a very deep formation of the Bible about the liberation of the people, about the Antiguo Testamento, how do you say?
The Old Testament.
The Old Testament, and how was the liberation of that, and the ZLN took that to make conscious about that. The diocese, obviously, they never agreed about the guns and the army, all that stuff. But what happened after that, it was one of the most, or one of the better things of the Chiapas and Mexico history, because the name of the indigenous people were put on the country's agenda, on the big agenda, and the Tratados de San Andrés, which never had been.
Treaty of San Andrés.
Oh, the Treaty of San Andrés.
Yeah, it has to do with the second part that I want to say about the free trade.
Because in one of the reports I was reading, it said that the indigenous people are the victims of free trade.
Of course.
And this is really key again, because I guess it remains to be ratified, but now NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, has re-emerged in a new format negotiated by Canada, Mexican government, and the United States, in a new model of it. But it has not been ratified yet. And those, when we talk about how those treaties will impact upon the local people.
Yeah, I think the main problem there is about knowledge, about know-how, about expertise, and about to having the way of Yeah, about knowledge, because we used to say, well, Eduardo Galeano said that 30 years ago. That
He's a Mexican writer.
No, he's from Uruguay.
Uruguayan writer, yes.
And he said that America Latina has the crops and Europe has the coffee. And why America Latina is not capable to roast their coffee? Because of racism, because of knowledge, they are not capable or able to do that because they hadn't had the opportunity, the educational opportunity to do it. And when we recovered the land area, we said, what should we do? What we're going to do with this land? And we realized that we had coffee, and coffee is one of the biggest lies of our world. Why? Because coffee as a crop, it's a commodity. It flows, goes up and down the coffee price as a cup.
Right.
But the coffee that you buy on a coffee shop never goes down. It's always go up. And how does it work, and why is it fair? Because you can work very hard in your cafetal, where the coffee is grown.
The land,
coffee
Plantation.
Yeah.
But these years you're gonna get 20 pesos per kilo, and the next year 30, and the next year 10. And it has nothing to do with the effort that you make in your land.
So the coffee prices are determined not by the producers, but by the international commodities market.
Yeah.
Which can be manipulated up and down.
Yeah. And this is not fair.
And the real profit comes in the value added part of the roasting and marketing.
That's why we're trying to go out from this kind of market. Why? Because we are trying to. We made a from the field to the cup way of trading. Like that's why our project is educational, and not only educational, but giving back the opportunity to the people to have power about their own. The coffee and the honey, all that stuff, and this is about education. That's why we have the coffee like university.
I don't know what that means. What is that?
We have a coffee school where they are able to try their coffee, to smell it, and to know how to roast it and how to sell it here in Canada, in the US, and also in Mexico, and to be able to know that their coffee is gold, and they can have the profit on their hands. And that's why we want to bring them back the opportunity to own that, because their own coffee, and because Europe, they roast the coffee there, and not they can't have the opportunity to do that.
So practically, how does the cooperative work? How does it actually function? And then now, and what was the Jesuit Center's role in facilitating the development of those cooperatives?
Yeah, they asked us to help them to.
They being the local farmers, local producers?
Local communities, local farmers. We started with one community, 22 producers, and they asked us to help them to improve their coffee and to sell it. But they were thinking in crop. And when we went to the communities and we started to having relations with universities, with enterprises, with roasters, they told us that the coffee model from the field to the cup, it will give us the profit to give them back to the people. And that's why we started this educational program we can sell the coffee on a coffee shop and not as green coffee, as greens. And 10 years after we started, we built the first coffee roasting facility. And then 5 years later, we started with our first coffee shop in Iberoamericana, Universidad Iberoamericana in Mexico City, which is a Jesuit university. They helped us to develop all the marketing, all that stuff, in order to have a good coffee, because we are always claiming for quality and not charity. And this is very important for us, because we are not saying, please help us because we are indigenous people and we don't have money. No.
Right.
We have a good coffee and you like good coffee. I'm selling you a good coffee and we know how to do business, but conscious business, but solidarity business, not business that NAFTA claims to be free trade, because it's not really free, because not everyone has the knowledge to do that, as we down there.
And also the coffee that's being produced it's certified organic. Like any producer has to guarantee that it's going to be organic production. So it's tying into the environmental concerns.
Yeah, of course, because at the same time that we are a cooperative, we are we have a commitment with the Mother Earth. You know, it's part of the spirituality of the people. You have to take care of the Mother Earth, because she's taking care of you. She's giving you all your meals, the corn, the coffee, all that stuff. And when every year when they start the harvest, they go to the mountains to say thank you to God and all that stuff. It's like, it's not organic only because it's fashionable, because organic, they had been organic for several years, not because it's fashionable, that stuff.
What I'm hearing you say right now it ties back in my mind to your first comments about the nature of the people, that there's a very deep spiritual base to all areas of their life, that they don't include whether it be political, organizational, economic. It all ties back into a fundamental spirituality, or as you said, to the heart.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. And some examples of that, when they decide to choose a role inside the community, they see, they behave, which roles he or she already took before, and they ask for how is his or her heart, and that pops up the harmony, the lekil kush lekhalil, the good life.
Okay.
Good life. Yeah, it's Tzeltal. Brings up the theme of the harmony, being in harmony, everyone, to being well, not to be angry, not to being hungry, to not being afraid of, and that's the spirituality that we discovered.
And that's the nature of the cooperative, is to also look after the needs of each member of the cooperative.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, absolutely. That's that way, and to have for example,
we probably have to come back to that after break.
Of course.
And stay with us, please, on Politically Speaking, Insights and Issues, and we'll carry on the implications for Indigenous people's identity.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
back to Politically Speaking, Insights and Issues. I'm your host, Dave Szollosy. Thanks for staying with us. Today we're talking about coffee and justice. And we were just talking about one of the particular projects of the Jesuit mission in Chiapas, Mexico, a coffee cooperative. And Jenny, what was the name of it?
Yomolatel.
And what does that mean?
You tell me.
It means we work together. Yeah, Yomol, it's together, and Atel, it's work, like working together.
But this isn't, you were saying before, this is not an isolated activity.
Right. So it's part of a network of similar initiatives of Jesuit centers in 12 different countries in Latin America. There are 16 centers that form part of this network that's called Comparte. And comparte means to share. The reason why some of these centers have been in operation for 20 years, 30 years, doing a variety of things, such as not only coffee production, but there's a center in Piura in Peru that does cheese production, others that do other kinds of economic development, alternative economic development for the local communities that are able to provide for the needs of the community by engaging in production that is more fair and also with value added. And so the need was felt that for all these various initiatives to share their knowledge, and not only to share the knowledge among themselves, but also to bring in some of the universities in different countries of Latin America that would provide some of the, perhaps some of the research and theoretical understanding of how to move from a local production to more regional and international impact, both in the not only to share knowledge on how to do production, but also to move the production cycle up, and also how to have a
production cycle up. Sorry.
So like a value added marketing, not only at the local level, but regional and perhaps even international level. So this network, which as I said is called Comparte, meets regularly, and it also has, and the last meeting was in Chiapas, and they hosted us, and it's a real sharing of knowledge of organizations and people who have been doing this work for a long time, and that want to learn from each other and see how they can work together. And we support, actually, the Canadian Jesuits International supports the staff, the salary of one staff person who travels around these various initiatives to facilitate this exchange.
And I would say that this program in Latin America and also Europe, it's part of the big mission of the Society of Jesus, which is faith and justice. And this is one of the most important things in the society, because in order to have faith, for example, the social fabric there in Chiapas, in order to have a native church and to be conscious about our faith, you have to eat well. You have to have justice inside. And we know that trying to build alternative economic systems, it's a way to have faith and a way to be more just there in Latin America.
That kind of brings me to the line of questioning I'd like us to look at in this segment, because I was reading a report from your mission on a strategic planning session that was looking at the biggest challenges or issues faced. And one common theme, the report says, arose that the people wanted an alternative to the political system, because the political parties do not respect or nurture, I'm going to blow the word, celtal?
Perfect Spanish.
Culture, or the way they organize. And quite the contrary, they said, political parties, they said, only bring division and conflict. So, in what way does this program now address the issue that's been identified by the people as one of the most stringent limiting factors?
It's a very easy thing. at the second article of our Constitution, Mexican Constitution, it says that the indigenous people has the right to have their own government. What says the Constitution?
That's in the Constitution.
But it's not ruled. It's not ruled. There's no rules in order to do that.
With what that means.
Yeah.
So it's an idea that exists in a vacuum without a structure or fabric.
Yeah.
That comes across.
Educationally speaking, there's also an idea of what the indigenous way of life means. For example, the education in Mexico, they used to say that it's bilingual. They used to say that they are intercultural, but they only have one subject in the school, or only a Celta language class, and all of this is in Spanish. So in the facts, they don't respect the way of organizing their life that was before this party system arrived to those areas. That's why we are aiming to reconstruct the social fabric that they were before the parties arrived. That's why they don't respect the Celta culture, because they only came there and they said, well, we have to vote, we are all Mexicans, we have to do this way, this way, this way. And now we know that in the middle of the parties in Mexico, every party has many corruption, and there's a way of how the parties behave. And the people there, in many meetings, they ask us to the mission to help them to figure out how to have a different way of a different political system down there. And we decided to ask them which political system was before the parties arrived, and we discovered that there's an assembly that can raise their hand to in order to have elections of their of de sus representantes, how do you say?
Of their representatives.
Of the representative inside the community. And there's a system, a different system, not the party system, in this social fabric that we are trying to reconstruct.
What you're saying, I got so many questions prompted by that, what you just said. First off, okay, I'll play negative for a moment here. Is that the party system has been in place, since the Mexican Revolution? Since the early part of the 20th century?
Since the independence.
Since independence?
Yep.
Okay, so well over 100 years. Okay, you've had the system in place. Would people not argue, say, look, that's a nice romantic ideal to go back to, the way things used to be, but in our modern context, in modern global politics, such a desire is unrealistic? How would you answer that charge?
Oh, the big question. Yeah, we're trying to figure out that, because this system hadn't. We don't want to go back. We want to develop, renew this system, because they never had the opportunity to develop this system and to bring it to these days.
So interrupted development took place to stymie what would have naturally evolved.
Yeah, that's it. And obviously, there's a different. Now it's different people, different Celtales. They're not the same Celtales as 100 years ago, and there's many things different that we are discovering. We have a certain structure inside this new alternative political system that has roles inside them. Batijaos, Chevaltijao. There's different name of roles that they're promoting this political system, trying to making meetings and sessions about what this new system means. They're reflecting. It's not to bring a political system very packed and to bring it now. We are building it. We're developing together with the people, and that's what the parties didn't ask to the people, to rebuild, to make a new system.
It almost reminds me a little bit, and Jenny, you might be more familiar with this too, in Nunavut, the Northern Canadian Territories. The representatives in the Territorial Assembly aren't elected along party lines. They're elected as individuals, and then from among the people who are elected, they select one to be the leader. Not necessarily which party affiliation got the most seats that we're used to in the provincial legislatures across. Is that kind of a structure? That comes from the First Nations traditions of the people of the North, more out of their tradition, but put into a modern context. Is that kind of like maybe what we're talking about?
It's kind of that, and the base of that is the land trust. We have
the what?
Land trust. We have the ejido.
Yes.
Ejido, which is the land trust. It's not an individual, how do you say?
Ownership.
Ownership, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, not private ownership,
Not private,
but communal ownership
yeah.
of the productive lands.
That's why it's possible, this system, this new political system to commonly thinking, commonly taking our calls, and this system has a base, a modern base.
We had a little taste of this. I was fortunate enough to go there in June for this meeting of Comparve, and we went to visit some of the communities. And some of the people who are playing these roles that he refers to came to speak to us, and they traveled hours from their various communities, and they all came and sat in front of us and explained to us what their role is vis-a-vis the community. So they would have the women who are in charge of family relations, would be like our social service minister, right? And the person who is in charge of land conflicts, and others about ownership, and others about children, but they're people who are selected and chosen by the community itself, and they would have their commitment is to the community and travel to the various communities to do that. It was a total rethink of how the communities can be represented and how their interests can be safeguarded while they feel quite removed from the elected politicians who have not represented their interests.
Yeah, and this structure that Jenny refers was buried by the parties because they hadn't had the opportunity to develop this structure.
It kind of answers one of the questions I had in my mind, because when you're talking about this revised structure, a question I had is, what happens when the political parties and the government then the government they control threaten to cut off social services, social programs that have become integral to the communities?
Social programs, yeah. Well, it's a big question, and it has to do with Latin America, not only Chiapas, not only Mexico, because the way of the social programs in Latin America used to be...
I'm going to have to let you answer the question. Think about the response, because we're going to have to go to break again. Stay with us, please, on Politically Speaking, Insights and Issues, as we carry on talking with Father Arturo.
Good.
Okay, so back to Politically Speaking, Insights and Issues. Joining us for our last segment here, we're trying to explore the topic of coffee and justice. And the question I had just asked before we went to break was about the conflict that starts happening when political parties and governments that they control threaten to cut off the social programs to the small communities as they set up these alternative methods of government. How is that dealt with by the communities?
Yeah, well, this is all about the Latin America. I just point out that the way of the government in Latin America and all the governments in Latin America do the social programs, it's to give money to the people by individual and not common, and that makes that these programs has like a como si fuera una situación de
it sets it up for the possibility of corruption by favoritism. Is that right?
Corruption, favoritism, and it's like son presas de eso. They are. They have money. The government has the money that they are giving them, and they don't have any choice, and they can't do the things commonly speaking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Creates division in the community.
Yeah, it creates division in the community.
I think what you're looking for is suppresses the community initiatives.
Yep. Yeah. That's right. That's what happened there.
Mm-hmm. So, what's the goal? You're here in Canada on a solidarity visit. What's the goal of your visit?
Well, Jenny can talk more about that, but for me and for we Jesuits to be here, it's that we are part of the big family, the Ignatian family, and we are the Society of Jesus, and in order of that, we want to bring the voice of the people here to Canada and to share knowledge, to share what's happening there, and to, in some way, talking about coffee and a more just economic system. It's that rise up how you are, how is your consumption of the things, of coffee, of bread, of everything. And that's why we are trying to bring this voice to Canada.
You know, it strikes me even in from another perspective. I mean, in one sense, perhaps progressive voices would be well received. The message that you're talking about, having a lot of support for international development and awareness. But in the last federal election we had, even the what I would call non-progressive voices were saying that we shouldn't be sending money in aid, we should be supporting self-sufficiency. So even from a right-wing economic perspective, the programs you're talking about should fit in with that agenda.
Of course, absolutely. That's why I said that we don't want charity, but quality, because we know that we can do it, but we hadn't had the opportunity to learn, to know that our coffee was gold, and that's why we didn't came here to put our hands and to say give us dollars. No, we want to work together, because we know that there's many people here in Canada, in the US, that can help us to develop many things. There's many a lot of tons of know-how here, and to share knowledge, because knowledge, I know that knowledge is power, and we want to share the power, because sometimes in these days, in this our system keeps the power in few hands, and not to share the knowledge and not to share the power. It's like the big idea of our system. And according the indigenous system there down there in Chiapas, to share the power is the best way to rebuild our community.
Can you add from a Canadian perspective the goal and objectives? Of this?
Well, first I wanted to say something about this push for self-sufficiency, which is true as long as we look at a just system. It's only possible when there's a just system. If within one day we can change the coffee price from in half and reduce it by half, it's basically, it's not, self-sufficient doesn't mean washing our hands of our responsibility. And self-sufficiency can only happen if there are just relations between the North and the South. And you can't leave somebody out in the cold to sleep in the street with no opportunity for education and ask them to be self-sufficient. So that is an important part of the message and of what we're trying to do.
Thank you for the clarifying that.
And then, in terms of the goal of this trip, is we do feel we are part of the Society of Jesus talks about its universal mission. You know, we are part of a universal body of. I was just at a meeting last week in Rome with 220 people from all over the world who work on issues, whether it's refugees, economic rights, indigenous rights, and we have to work together in order to bring about those changes.
Brilliant. Listen, Jenny, thank you so much for coming up. Father Arturo, we're so glad to see you.
Thank you
very much for coming on the show. Folks, this has been Politically Speaking, Insights and Issues. Thank you very much for watching.